Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Wilbon, our commencement speaker, is, by all standards, one of our nation's most respected journalists. Years ago, long before his peers had even considered it, Mike ventured far beyond the safe berth, very safe berth, he had in print at the Washington Post. He knew it was important to reach out to his audiences on all the platforms they used. Today, he is a force on television and radio and digital media, and of course, as a lyrical writer. His list of career accomplishments is so long that I looked at it and realized we'd be here till tomorrow and then I'd be able to introduce him. So let me just urge you to look it up. It's stunning. For us, however, what counts is that Mike regularly tells the millions who listen to him, including on a podcast that went viral this week and blazed across Northwestern, that this is his journalistic home and anchor here at Medill and Northwestern. And Mike, if we're your journalistic family, I hope you know that you are a mainstay member of ours. As a result, it will not surprise you to learn that when I called Mike and told him that this was a special graduation, he's a trustee, he's our alum, and the Qatar students will be here, and it's my last time, and we put it to a vote, and everybody sort of looked at me with shock and said, well, of course we want him to come. So, all I had to do was say that, and he said, John, I'll come. All you have to do is see to it that the Chicago Bulls make the NBA playoffs, because then I will be in town for ESPN covering the games. Or, if that failed, and sadly, Mike, I blew it, it did, then all we had to do was convince the NBA to set the final schedule so that he could easily fly in and fly out from wherever he was. Now, I don't want you to tell Mike that we had absolutely no influence over the schedule. But we're sure going to claim it because it worked out that you would come. You're a role model, Mike. Your journalism is among the smartest, most insightful, most nuanced we see, and we're deeply grateful that you would squeeze us in the middle of the NBA Finals. It is my great honor to welcome my friend and our alum, Mike Wilbon, back home.
First of all, I'm sipping some tea. I had no voice an hour and a half ago, none whatsoever. It was like the curse of Kornheiser. He was trying to do something to keep me from being here. I don't know what, it's not from screaming at him either. I am honored to be here. First, I have to do a couple of things. And we do need a bell and a producer, but I'm gonna try to stay under some control because there's no bell. Limiting me per topic. I'm going to embarrass a couple of people and ask them to stand up. Is Dallas here? Dallas, right. Dallas, are you out here? And Melina, I saw you already. Where's Melina? Stand up, please. Okay, so I have two favorite students, in part for different reasons. Melina and I worked together at ESPN before she came back to grad school. And for both of them, I sort of, whether they know it or not, wrote some recommendations. I guess it helped. I'm so proud of both of you. So I worked with Melina. Dallas, I've known since he was born. And because his mom and I were among best friends growing up on the south side of Chicago. And as he knows, I've been talking to him since he was 12 years old about coming to Northwestern. Did it work out? Can I say I told you so? Can I get a I told you so? Both of you, thanks for putting up with me and the midnight phone calls back to fuss at you and all that sort of stuff. Congratulations, and I just want to do that personally and embarrass both of you. Thank you. You could both sit down. John said all those nice things about me just now. I got a Medill F. Still pissed off about it, too. Basic writing teacher gave us an assignment about a fire, an imaginary, fictional fire. Is this assignment still being done? Gave us a fire chief's name. Only one smartass checked the spelling, and then the phone books. There was no Google, people. I wasn't that person. I got an F. It's the best thing that ever happened. Because for the next 31 years, writing at the Washington Post, I never misspelled anybody's name. Never. Welcome to the latest college graduation exercise in America. We are the absolute last commencement, right? Is that correct? There's been a run on high-profile journalists giving commencement addresses this spring. Katie Couric spoke at the University of Virginia, Brian Williams at George Washington, Maria Shriver at USC, Annenberg to be specific, Barbara Walters at Yale, which means you guys really got the short end of this stick. You can blame John for that. David Simon, the creator of The Wire, spoke at Georgetown. Time Magazine editor Rick Stengel at Butler, my dear friend Gwen Eiffel at Holy Names, Ted Koppel at UMass Amherst. I suspect they were all asked to some degree to steady the ranks, if you will, to reassure the graduates and their parents about the state of the journalism industry. And if you thought the transition into the workaday world was going to be gradual, I guess I'm here to shock your senses. 2 years ago, I was honored to be the commencement speaker for the university in general. As Morty mentioned today, I'm honored to be here at the Medill commencement. It's different in some ways, it's harder, and it's certainly more personal. I have zero idea of what McCormick grads are thinking today. I have zero idea of what the Beanan School of Music grads are thinking today, but I know this audience pretty well. Your dreams, your aspirations, your concerns and fears are not very different, if at all, from mine as I sat there 32 years ago today. Are my writing samples good enough to get me a job in the foreseeable future? Does my reel have the right mix of stories for the news director to notice my work? Am I better suited for life on camera or in production? Do I really have to start my career in Bozeman, Montana, because I'm from New York? How do I make my student loan payments if I'm making $17,000 a year? Michael Bloomberg, the commencement speaker at the University of North Carolina, told Tar Heel graduates recently to illuminate the corners of the world. I'll just say that before you can illuminate anything, you better get a job. Hopefully one that pays enough money that you can illuminate the corners of your apartment by keeping the electricity on. I understand that's hard to do. And for those of you who, like I did, want to start life as a print reporter and climb the career ladder in the most traditional media construct of all, it's easy enough to find data that says the newspaper industry specifically is on life support. The New Orleans Times-Picayune announced it's going to print a newspaper only 3 days a week, as you all know. From 2006 to 2009, the newspaper industry went from nearly $50 billion in revenue to $27.5 billion, meaning half the industry's revenue was gone, wiped out in 4 years. And since 1990, according to the New Yorker, nearly a quarter of all newspaper jobs have disappeared, largely because only 19% of Americans between 18 and 34 claim to even look at a newspaper anymore. All right, that's the end of the gloom and doom portion of this speech. Using the newspaper industry to assess the state of journalism and media is like saying that because boxing is dead, it means the entire sports industry is in trouble, and we know that's not the case. As Robert Krulwich, host of Radio Lab, said during his commencement speech at Cal Berkeley last month, you are entering a world that is riper, more pregnant with newness, new ideas, new beats, new opportunities than most generations of journalists before you, and that includes me and mine. While we are indeed writing the obituaries of the newspaper industry, which pains me greatly since I spent 31 years, mostly glorious years, in it, the fact is the business of storytelling, of creating content, of new media, or whatever you want to call it, is not dead, it's evolving. It's not contracting, it's actually expanding. Traditional brands like the Washington Post, my newspaper, and the New York Times, and the broadcast networks are racing to figure out how to have their content delivered increasingly in appealing ways via mobile devices and tablets and other means too new and untraditional for me to even understand just yet. The Washington Post now has web producers, video producers, a social media team, an interactivity team, and an engagement team, all who've had to hire people, many of whom have journalism education backgrounds. There are must-reads among new blogs, online reporting. While we despair over the Times-Picayune in one way, the fact is that newspapers, reporters, and editors in the days immediately following Hurricane Katrina produced some of the finest, most essential work in its history. It was not on a sheet, it was on a screen. While our ranks, and I'm speaking of Medill alums, are filled with men and women working as editors and correspondents, investigative reporters and anchors, all the traditional media roles, we also have internationally accomplished achievers in working roles all of you need to consider if you already haven't. Clinton Kelly is co-host of TLC's What Not to Wear. David T. Friendly produced the critically acclaimed award-winning Little Miss Sunshine. Luke Matheny is an Academy Award-winning writer, director, actor. Cindy Chupak was the executive producer and writer of Sex and the City. While there is clearly a reduction in the number of reporters, editors, and columnists inside the walls of any newspaper, the Washington Post, as I mentioned, employs all those people in those new ways, like interactivity and engagement. The three networks, which is about all we had when I finished Medill in the summer of 1980, were about the only outlet for creative writers seeking employment in the television industry. There are literally dozens of channels and hundreds of programs now in need of content. That includes news outlets. Rami Khoury, the commencement speaker, of course at Northwestern at Qatar, told the Medill students there, quote, "The Arab Spring is the single biggest story in a generation, and you leave here with a formidable toolkit to cover it in all ways." The toolkit he spoke of is what you've been putting here together at Medill. It's what's going to make you not just more employable initially, but better than your peers in what has increasingly become a competitive, even hyper-competitive environment. One of the reasons you ought to be optimistic and upbeat today, despite the uncertain job market, is that Medill grads are better prepared than just about anybody in caps and gowns in America this spring. There are very real reasons Medill alums have 38 Pulitzer Prizes. Our faculty and curriculum and the constant self-evaluation that we're going through, it tells us what we should do to lead the school consistently to produce some of the smartest, most accomplished men and women in this profession. This could very well be the most competitive time we've ever seen in terms of the job market for journalists coming out of school, which you should feel excited about more than scared. If for no other reason than you're better prepared than any student in the country to rock and roll with the sea changes of this industry. A Medill education has never been more valuable than it is today. It's enabled you to be smarter, to think more critically, to better take advantage of the changing ways Americans are consuming news and information, to find greater balance in your reporting, to more completely grasp the shifting dynamics between storytelling and the technology, to know that just because the newspaper and evening news both appear to be dying doesn't mean interest in news and information is dying. Quite to the contrary. This culture is more addicted to news and information than ever before. Nobody said it's going to be easy to figure out the new media frontier. Then again, if it was going to be easy, you wouldn't have needed to bust your butts in time to earn the degrees you earn today. While journalists are historically particularly inadequate at seeing around corners to anticipate change in our own industry, there are educators like John Levine, who will be leaving us shortly, and of course our incoming Dean of Medill, Brad Ham, who I'm so delighted began his career as a sports writer, who are standing at the door always to anticipate and even welcome change. This isn't the time for whining. It's not the time for self-pity. It's the right time for each and every one of you, equipped with the best journalism education in this country, to compete for what available jobs there are with the attitude that you're the best person for that job, because you are. I'm going to tell you a quick story. In the summer of 1980, I went to work as an intern for the Washington Post. I got there, graduation was on June 13. I got to Washington on June 14. I went to work, I went to the sports department. I thought some staff writers were gonna help me figure out how to get to RFK Stadium, how to get to Memorial Stadium, how to get to pro football games. And my sports editor, George Solomon, who hired me, said, he's a Northwestern kid, he's a Medill kid, he'll be fine. That was my introduction. That's it. Because there had been 60 years of people who came before me from Medill who knew exactly what to do and had a track record that was unlike any other. How did I get that job at the Washington Post? Assistant managing editor named Mike Hill walked onto this campus. I had never applied, I had never put out a phone call, never put out a letter, hadn't had any clips yet. He said he was looking for interns because the Washington Post interns he thought in some ways had fallen off, and he came to Northwestern to find them, to find us. I had breakfast with John this morning. We talked about the companies, not just newspapers anymore, all kinds of companies, including IBM, Blue Cross, who come to him, who call him, searching for Medill grads. I'm not saying it's easy, it's competitive, but there's nothing rewarding I've ever encountered that was easy. You guys are in such a great position. It's a race. You know, it's no different than Oklahoma City and Miami playing for the NBA Finals now. And you know what? We're on the winning part of that equation more than any other group of graduates every single year for so many years. I think it's 91 and counting. When I go to work every day at ESPN, my colleagues in various posts around the country doing incredible jobs include Rachel Nichols, Kevin Blackistone. You know some of these names, but you may not know everything about them. J.A. Adonde, Adam Schefter, just to name a few. They're all Medill grads. Christine Brennan at ABC, Darren Ravel at CNBC, all Medill grads. That's just sports television. Those are just the people I know and am familiar with and hang around with all the time. You come from the same ranks we do. Believe it or not, once upon a time, we were young and idealistic and looking for ways to make our marks in an industry that was changing dramatically in its own ways. I have no doubt that in newsrooms and in locker rooms and at television stations and all sorts of places where new media is breaking out that I can't yet anticipate, that I'm going to encounter you as you walk up and say, you spoke at my graduation, I'm a Medill alum. Welcome to the club.
All right. Stand up, one. Come on.
I forgot to add one more thing. A simple thing. I'm proud as hell of you guys. And just know that it's a small fraternity, but it's loud, it's got a lot of pride, and it's a damn good one.